Welcome to Fair Game. I'm Kristine Leahy. My guest today is a former NBA Defensive Player of the Year, an NBA champion, and former Circuit City Employee of the Month, Metta World Peace.
Yes.
Good to see you. Did you ever actually get to be the Employee of the Month at Circuit City?
I only last one day.
Only one day?
Yeah, the great Jerry Krause was like, okay, you play for the Bulls, you should not be working at Circuit City.
I loved that part of your documentary, that it said that you actually went and you worked at Circuit City.
Yeah.
It says a lot about you. And I think that, you're doing a lot of interviews right now, right?
I am.
And people keep saying, oh, he's such a nice guy. He's not that guy that was like angry and punching people. He's a really nice guy. I feel like I know that from personal experience with you. Like, there's so many examples where you really have just been the greatest. I got a tattoo. You literally tried to help me find who was gonna do the tattoo, and then you also showed up. Like, that's so nice. Most people don't do that.
And you also wore my brand.
Yeah,
for me on television. You always supported. You're very supportive over the years, and.
But you've been so supportive of me. Like, there's a situation I broke up with my boyfriend, and you checked to see how I was doing. Or we ran into you in Charlotte at All-Star, and you came and you said hello to our entire crew and stayed and talked to us while there was a swarm of fans that were trying to take pictures and your autograph.
I think like in this business, as a sports business, and earlier in my career, you know, I wasn't as like inviting. But as I got older, I started to get more invited to media and to colleagues and different things like that. And I think it's such a short window of, you know, this engagement. Yeah. Right? And I think it's always cool to kind of make friends along the way.
Yeah, but you really mean it. And
Absolutely.
I hear people say he's a nice guy. I'm like, no, he really, really is.
Absolutely.
And I have examples of it. You are. I mean, I haven't seen you be not a nice guy as far as I've known you.
You know, on the court, it's like when you're playing basketball, when you're playing for like that survival, it's like, okay, what can I do today to win, to be effective, to be the best me? And it's like, for me, it was that aggression.
Yeah.
It was that passion. Then it was always over the top. But I'm not like that, like off the court.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not like thinking about defense, you know, when I'm not playing basketball.
That was the thing that stuck out to me when I was watching the doc, is that you said that you had to have so much hate in you in order to be the best basketball player possible. Like, why?
You know, it's because I felt like if I didn't hate my opponent, I wasn't gonna play well, I wasn't gonna win. Mm-hmm. You know, so now we're going to the games, it was just, I hate the fans, and then I would say, wow, a 6-year-old kid in there. Oh, I hate him too.
Really?
Like, everybody in the arena was my enemy, the coaches, everybody, cameramen, camerawomen, everything. And that's how I went into the arena, you know, when I was playing basketball, and I was able to get into that zone, you know, and then on top of that, I always tried to keep my opponent to 0. That didn't happen a lot, it's impossible. Mm-hmm. But that's where they would say, wow, you know, Ron Artest's opponent had 7 points, 11 points, you know, 6 points. It was always that was the intensity that I had.
Where do you think that came from? Because I understand, like, boxers say that too, right? They have to hate their opponent just for that time in the ring. But like, that really came for you.
Yeah.
Where did that stem from?
I think some of it came from playing basketball as a kid. And I remember the first time I lost, I was crying. I was on 12th Street in Queensbridge, I was crying. Then, like, sometimes you play against guys that just got finished bullying you, you're playing against them on the court. So you have that fear. Mm-hmm. And after a while, it's like, I'm not gonna have no more fear no more. And I'm gonna do whatever I have to do. So that was something, that's the approach I brought to the game, starting in New York City. Yeah. And in New York City, we used to go to a couple parks and play. You know, some guys would pull out the heat, you know, they'll pull out the ratchet if they have to, you know. Sometimes we would go to the games, you know, with some ratchets in our backpack. And that was the character. Sure. You know, so it's like I always had the mindset of, if I ever get in any controversy, you know, it's gonna be a fight. And then I said, you know what? Just go into the game ready to fight. Just like that. Yeah, and then eventually I had to ease out of that mindset, just ease out of that mindset. I thought it was really interesting too when you said, you know, I go into the NBA and I see these huge guys with these huge shoulders, and Karl Malone and Charles Oakley, and you felt like, oh, I have to just be angry and hate them. I was very fearful, because for me, it's always a fight. Mm-hmm. So if I see a guy like that, it's like, oh wow, if we get into a fight, he could potentially kick my butt. So it's like, are you gonna just take it? No, I'm not gonna just take it. So I remember one time I went for a layup against the Heat, and Alonzo Mourning, you know, huge. He said, you come back in here again, I'm knocking you down. And I went back in there again. You know, I wanted to fight at that point.
Yeah.
My first practice in Chicago, I body slammed Tony Kukoc. You know, he was hitting me, and I was like, so he hit me on. I was denying him on defense because my defense was good, and then I go back on offense. And I went back on offense thinking defense, and I took him and I scooped him. We started fighting in practice. It was like one of my first practices. Then I apologized to him.
So you're just living and playing the way that you knew. That's what it was. And we're talking about like the layup, right? Let's talk about the Ben Wallace layup.
Yeah.
You were all in all the time. There was no way to scale it down. So when people were saying, how in the world, you guys are up, it's a layup, why are you gonna do that to Ben Wallace? Like, that's just what you did.
Yeah, you can't give up in the streets. You play to the end. It's times, if you're up 30 or 20 and then you could potentially lose a game because you didn't get that loose ball, you didn't hustle. And it's like, for me, all I wanted was a ring, and I wanted to be the best, and you can't really make the mistakes. And look, I played so hard to get one ring, you know? So with Ben Wallace in that layup, no layups.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't want him and I did give him an extra push, and you know, maybe I was ready to fight at that point, but then I was kind of conflicted between my sessions, between therapy, between wanting to fight. So I was going through a lot at that time.
What do you mean conflicted?
Because my therapist was saying, when you get into confrontation, don't throw your career away.
Yeah.
You know, and just think about something positive, like your children. So we played around with a lot of things, but my children was on my mind a lot at that time. That was one of the things that I thought about. And when you get into a fight, it's like your kids, oh wow, don't get suspended. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I always say, like, there's a part of athletes, especially really, really successful ones, which you were, that you have to have this like killer instinct and this fight in you. And they'll say you can't have high levels of empathy. You can't really think about peaceful things, or it will make you not as good at what you do on the court or the field.
Yeah.
So was that kind of the thought that was going on in your mind? Like, I don't want to lose my edge.
I didn't want to lose my edge, but then when I didn't want to lose my edge. I always wanted to be the hardest worker, not necessarily the toughest, but like the hardest worker on the court. And sometimes you get somebody working harder than you, you kind of take that personal, and instead of taking a loss or just trying to win, you know, you fight. You know, you do something that has nothing to do with basketball. But the best approach is the Tim Duncan, Kawhi Leonard. These guys have a streamlined focus on the game. And I don't know how Kawhi does it. His dad passed away. You know, his dad was murdered. You know, and what difference is that story than my story? And he is so much more stable, you know, than I was. But I love that approach because he's focused on the game. The game is fun. We're getting paid. We're taking care of our families. You know, just focus on the game and put all your energy towards the game. That's something I wasn't able to do early in my career.
Were you fearful at all that therapy or too much therapy would hurt your game?
Yes. When I was in Chicago, they offered me medicine. And not Chicago Bulls, the doctors I was seeing in Chicago. And when I first took the medicine the first time, I didn't like how it made me feel. And I was like, is this gonna keep my edge off? Is it gonna help me? And so I remember just throwing the medicine in the toilet. And then later, I told them I was taking it, but then eventually I said, listen, I'm not taking the medicine. You know, and I remember being scared that I would not be able to be the aggressive defender that I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.